Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, Thrive Pet Design. Today I'm going to be talking about 5 common betta fish myths that I see online. I just wanted to take a minute to debunk these because it's going to be part of on my website I have a betta fish care guide. This is going to be part of that, so I just wanted to take a moment to go over some of these really common myths that I see to help explain more of why they are wrong in proper betta fish care. Make sure you watch the end because the last one makes me just a little bit angry. An alternative title to this video could be that people upset me by spreading misinformation on betta care, and here is why they are wrong. One myth that I hear from time to time is that betta fish are aggressive. I mean, they are known to be these Siamese fighting fish. Males will fight each other, often to the death, and that is something I want to touch upon because betta fish can be aggressive with fish of their own species and species similar like other types of social bettas or gouramis, and they can be aggressive with some flashy species, but generally bettas are a very peaceful type of fish. And the reason I wanted to mention this one is because a lot of people think that it's impossible for them to live with other species or else they will kill them. This isn't necessarily the case. I mean, even female bettas can live in betta sororities. The community has started to change their opinion a bit on keeping betta sororities, so I'd recommend doing your own research because I don't think they're for most keepers, especially with how complicated betta fish are. This entire myth, the idea that they are aggressive, is also partially the appeal of this fish that makes it so interesting and engaging, is this feisty, unique fish. And they definitely have a big personality, but I don't think they should be called aggressive because I don't think that's the way to describe them. They're not like a super aggressive cichlid or anything. I think they're more of a slightly moody aquarium fish is how I like to call it. They tend to be really peaceful, but they all depend on fish from fish. I've had some bettas that do really well with community fish and they hate shrimp. I've had some that love shrimp but don't like fish. Some of them like snails, others eat snails, you know? It really depends on the individual fish, but I don't think in their nature they are super duper 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 aggressive to other species of fish. It's more of when they hit specific triggers that kind of affect them in a specific way. So this isn't like the world's biggest myth because they can be aggressive, but it's not something that is completely accurate. I think saying that they are aggressive and then leaving it at that isn't the full story because I think that there is much more in depth about how betta fish react to other species. Myth number 2 is that betta fish get lonely. This one's kind of the polar opposite of bettas are aggressive because a lot of people are like, you have to keep your betta alone because it's aggressive, and then some other people are like, oh, my betta fish is lonely. And this is not true. I understand the sentiment of looking at your fish and it may be like sitting or something and it's like, oh, I must be so bored. But that's usually not the case. Betta fish are not like a species of tetra, like the neon tetra. You should have 6, or corridoras, you should have a school of 6 of the same species, because that makes them feel better, makes them feel more confident, peaceful. Betta fish don't naturally get lonely. Specifically the betta splendens don't naturally get lonely. They really don't require the other fish. While other fish can provide mental stimulation, I wouldn't go out of your way to get other fish for your betta. I think if your betta fish is bored, you should upgrade your tank. The minimum tank size for a betta is 5 gallons. You should add more enrichment. You could get a leaf hammock, a floating betta log. You could get live plants. What I recommend, you could get driftwood. You could get some stones, some decor that isn't too rough on your betta's fins. I don't think getting tank mates is a solution if you think your betta looks bored. I think the best solution if your betta is bored is to ensure that they are getting the proper spacing in the first place. Basically, bettas don't get lonely, but they do get bored from a lack of mental stimulation, and while tank mates can provide mental stimulation, it's more risky than it's worth in my opinion, especially when you are getting additional fish just for your betta. I think it's not entirely putting the well-being of those other fish you are bringing into your life first. Okay, so my third myth is that betta fish don't need heaters. I think this has to be one of my least favorite myths, besides the 5th one, obviously. And I'm sure a lot of people can even guess what it is already. I just don't like it because I think if you look at their natural habitat, it's pretty easy to understand that they do need heaters. Basically, the water where they live, I'm not going to get into it because this goes more into point number 5, but where they live, the water is shallow, yes, but it's also very expansive, but because it is shallow, it's very easily heated up by the sun, because there's a wider surface area for the sun to be hitting, opposed to like, you know, like the murky depths of a pond where it can get really cold at the bottom. Well, it's like, because the sun is hitting the top of it constantly, it's pretty hot water. It's 76 to 80 degrees, and well, I mean, that's not like boiling, but it's still a nice tropical temperature. Betta fish are a tropical species coming from Southeast Asia. They require a heater. I don't know how else I can put that. They literally require one. It's not like, I mean, even if your room temperature is 76 degrees, which is insanely hot, you should still have a heater in the aquarium no matter what, because temperature fluctuations can be extremely deadly. If it gets cold at night and your tank temp drops down to 70, 72, sometimes people even keep their house at 68. But basically, if it gets much colder than that, I mean, you can really start to see physical issues with fin rot. You can get ick. Their metabolism rate slows down, so they're not moving as quickly, and it's just not good for their health, and in the long run they really need that heater for optimal health, and it helps keep them happy, and their metabolic activity is at the correct rate, and they're much happier with a heater. Okay, so the fourth myth is that betta fish are lazy. They are not lazy by nature. As a matter of fact, they are extremely active species, especially the Plakats that don't have the longer fins kind of pushing and pulling. They are extremely active, while they do take time to lounge and rest because their fins can get heavy. They're definitely not a lazy species as I would describe them. They are very smart. They can do tricks. They can, I mean, they will jump out of the water if water conditions aren't correct, but you can also train them to jump out to get food, which is really cool and a lot of fun. They can tell when the owner is coming, and they come out of the water to come say hello to you. They are extremely intelligent, and while lazy doesn't entirely mean stupid, I think the fact that they're so willing to come forward and come greet your owner, it just shows that they are not lazy. They are very smart and willing to move around, especially for food, show off just how cute they are. I think a reason that a lot of people think that they're lazy, I think one thing maybe is that they don't have a heater in the, presumably the bowl they're living in. And if they don't have a heater, as I said, their metabolic activity slows down, they start to get extremely lethargic, and this just results in them seeming lazy. Because they're sitting on the bottom, maybe, because, you know, maybe they're not being able to digest food because it's so cold, and they're just getting bloated and kind of constipated, and leading to all these health issues. And also, if they have a very limited tank size to begin with, they can't be as active as they would be in a 5 or 10 gallon. So yeah, no, betta fish are not lazy. They're extremely intelligent, smart. They are very willing to move around and do all these tricks, and they're willing to come greet you every time you walk by the tank. So cute. They definitely do a lot of lounging, but that doesn't mean they're lazy. I think they're just taking a rest. I mean, it's like, I don't think my rabbits are lazy, even though they think they must sleep like half the day. I think that they're just resting to do all their binkies later on. Okay, so the final myth, and my least favorite, kind of tying into the fourth one, is that betta fish can live in bowls. I can't understand how we live in 2020, and yet we are still keeping animals in spaces they can just fit in. This myth actually makes me kind of upset because I didn't rescue my bettas from bowls, but they were kept in really bad conditions. One of my bettas, he was in a 1 gallon tank that had a heater and a filter, sure, but it's still 1 gallon is not enough space. And he was in an overstocked tank. It had an African dwarf frog in a single 1 gallon tank with him. And that may not sound like a lot of stocking, but he still had ammonia burn when I brought him home. But I bring this up because most bowls have a 0.5 or 0.75 gallon capacity. Some of them have a 1 gallon capacity. And it's really just like, if that's what happens in 1 gallon, how can a bowl even be worth that much? Betta fish can get 2 to 3 inches in size, and a 0.5 gallon container is not big enough to hold something that amazing, and they can't really be properly cycled. but they can't live in bowls. It's not big enough for a heater. It's not big enough for a filter, which is necessary. Betta fish have a minimum tank size of 5 gallons. That is such an important thing, and I literally cannot stress that. Some people keep them in 2.5. I just, in my opinion, that's not really big enough for their entire life. However, I will respect anyone who does a 2.5 gallon because it's still significantly better than a bowl. 2.5 gallons heated and filtered, you are doing it right. And that's literally all I have to say, is just that a bowl will not cut it, because these species are just so beautiful. And in their natural habitat, they don't live in puddles. The water is shallow, yes, as I mentioned, but they live in rice paddies. They live in rice paddies, and to people who don't know, they water rice paddies by flooding them. Rice is it needs a lot of water to grow properly. It's not a simple plant where it gets watered once a week and they live in these little tiny puddles. They live in these expanses of water that are just... That's pretty big, and there's so much space. And if a betta does get stuck in a puddle, it has a labyrinth organ to jump out into a bigger space. It's always looking for somewhere else that it can thrive, which is why if they were in a 0.5 gallon container in the wild, they would jump out of it and they would go find that 10 gallon plus space that they are looking for, that they would naturally be living in, which is so frustrating to me when, you hear that people say that they can live in bowls, but when you look at these facts and more of the information about how detrimental it is to their health, when they even live in a 1 gallon container, you start to realize that it's not really an ethical thing to do in even a 1 gallon container, because while 1 gallon is still better than 0.5 gallons, it's still not that 2.5, 5 gallon minimum, which will really, really, really help you take care of your betta fish in the best way possible. Really anything lower than 2.5 gallons, in my opinion, unless it's like 2.49, is not suitable. Just because after keeping these species, I couldn't imagine doing anything less than a 5. They are so active, they are so beautiful. A 5 gallon is the perfect size to completely highlight how beautiful these fish are. It shows off their colors, it shows how quickly they can just run across the tank to see you when you walk over, and it shows how they interact with everything, like all the little things that you keep in there. And it can show off all these beautiful live plants that you can get. And I just don't think a bowl is ever suitable for any species of anything. Perhaps a shrimp, but even then, I don't think I would do that, because I've noticed that shrimp do better when they are kept in multiples, because they feel more confident, in my experience. Maybe snails, but even then, it's would there even be enough biofilm? Is that the ethical thing to do? And in my experience, it is not. Thank you everyone so much for getting to the end of the video. I hope you found it interesting. It was a lot of fun to record, even though I kind of got slowly upset at the end. Especially, when you really start to love these fish. They're such a unique species, and I can never stress that enough. I love them so much, and I hope that that's pretty clear. This video is going to be embedded on my website, which I will probably leave a link to in my description. Knowing me, I'll forget. I try not to. But it'll be linked in the description, and it will be embedded on my website. So if you have anything you'd like to add to this video or that you think is important, please consider leaving it down in the comments, so that way people can actually see it if they're looking at these myths. Especially feel free to bring up your own myths. Perhaps you've noticed something that really doesn't sit well with you in betta fish keeping. There were a few other ones that I could not include on this list because I wanted to keep it to 5, but especially feeding myths. I hear a lot of people just on the single belt, they just use the betta pellets and nothing else. Some people will feed 1 to 3 minutes every day. Yikes. So yeah, I would love to hear what you think about that. Thank you everyone so much for watching, and I will see you later. Bye!